Hello, everyone. It's Ashley Gronewald with Hunter Row Real Estate. Thank you for joining me. I am excited to talk with you a little bit about real estate today since the last couple sessions have not been about real estate. But I thought this was a timely discussion just because I know a lot of you have been probably cooped up in your home for a while and realizing maybe that your home isn't suitable for the needs of your family anymore, and maybe starting to think about what it would look like to buy a house. And so I want to talk you through the timeline of buying a home, as well as some obstacles you might face along the way. And this is typically what I go through when I'm first meeting with a buyer. When they say, okay, we're ready to start the process of buying a home, what does it look like? And if you're anything like me, you're a little bit of a planner and like to have an idea of where this process is going to take you, how long it's going to take you, what obstacles you might face. And what I will tell you is that I'm going to go over the things that I see most commonly. Are there a ton of different obstacles that could come along the way? Yes, but we're going to focus on the things that are most common. One, I don't want to create more anxiety than you need. And also I want to be able to just give you a taste of some things you might see in our current market. Now, of course, this could change as we enter different seasons in the market, but as of right now, we still hold as a seller's market, which just means that there's not enough inventory to meet the demand of buyers. So we have more buyers than we do have sellers. And so right now that puts us in a seller's market. And so our buyers have to often be more competitive. So a lot of the obstacles we'll talk about will deal with how to be competitive in a market that is extremely saturated with buyers and not enough listings. So the first thing, if you know of anyone who's thinking about selling, or if you're thinking about selling, that could help our situation of having a lack of inventory. So let me know about that, because I'd love to help them. But I want to walk you through the process of buying a home. And I want you to know that the vast majority of my buyers tell me after they go through the process, that was easier than I expected, or that went quicker than I expected, which is often the case. And so I want to give you just some expectations so you're not surprised by how quickly the process is. And also just to feel comfortable with the timeline as you plan and prepare for buying a home. So the timeline for buying a home. So first off, I would say I'm going to speak to the typical buyer, and you may fall outside of the typical buyer, and I don't want you to feel any pressure to fall within these timelines, but this is just typical. Typically, it's about 2 months. Now, how do I come up with 2 months? About a month of looking for a home and about a month to close. So that's it. 2 months on average is what it takes my buyers to get to the closing table and move into their new house. So when you think about that, the first month is where you're doing a lot of your showings, your drive-bys, really getting acclimated with what's available in the market, how quickly homes are coming on the market, and how quickly they're selling. So you're getting an idea of supply and demand and what's out there that you like. And so if you have a very specific niche of what you're looking for, this timeline could be much longer. Or if you're starting early because you're a super planner, then the process will be longer, and that is okay. But on average, from the time that I meet with a buyer to discuss what we're discussing today to when they write an offer on a home is generally 1 to 4 weeks. 1 to 4 weeks. And this might surprise you, but on average, they look at 5 to 7 homes in person. 5 to 7 homes. Does that sound like less than what you would guess? A lot of times buyers think that they need to look at 20 or 30 homes. And I'll tell you, we are more than happy to show you that many homes, but you're not going to like it anymore. You're just going to want a house at that point. The houses will start running together. You'll start getting frustrated and start dreaming of a home that doesn't exist because you've looked at so many homes. So on average, buyers look at 5 to 7 homes before writing an offer. And a lot of that is due to driving by homes and eliminating them just by the things that you see on the exterior. Maybe it's a steep driveway or a small lot or 540 in the background, power lines, thing that would derail you from moving forward. That could be what eliminates a lot of showings. But then also you look at a lot of showings online, you look at homes that way. And so that eliminates a lot of in-person showings. So again, you may be the person that needs to look at a lot more houses, and that is okay. We will show you as many homes as you need to until we find the right house. But I don't want you to be surprised if after the first couple of homes, you're ready to write an offer because you've already processed what it is you're looking for. You know what you want, and you know homes sell quickly. So first month is just looking for a home. And again, we strongly encourage driving by homes and getting a sense of the area. That's the best time you could spend prior to writing an offer, is knowing the area, knowing the neighborhood, getting a sense of what you're looking for. Some of those things are just something you feel when you're there, and I can't necessarily know that feeling for you. So that is going to be super helpful for you in the process. And during that time, I would strongly encourage that you're talking to a lender, and getting all your ducks in a row for the finance piece of this, because that will help eliminate some of the stress or anxiety that could come along with writing an offer and moving through the process of contract to close. So anything you can do to prepare ahead of time for the purchase would be to talk to a lender, driving by neighborhoods, getting acclimated to the area. That will make the process so much smoother and less stressful once you get to the point to write an offer. Let's say we've gotten to that point where you have found a home and you're ready to offer on it. Now some of the obstacles come into play. So how long has the house been on the market? That's one of the number one questions I ask and look at, because that determines how quickly we have to act, how high demand the home is, and whether we will need to offer aggressively. So days on market are one of the most important pieces of data that I'm looking at when you are interested in a home. So if the home has been on the market longer than 2 weeks in our market, that's typically seen as a longer period of time. And that's great for you as a buyer, because that means that you may not be in competition, which is awesome. But 9 times out of 10, my buyers are in competition, which means the house has not been on the market more than a week and there are potentially multiple offers. And when I say it's an obstacle, it doesn't mean that we can't work through it. It's just an obstacle. And it means that we have to decide, is it worth competing for? And some of you will decide it's not worth competing for, because you are going to pay a premium to buy a house that's in multiple offers in the first few days it's on the market. So you have to decide, is it worth being aggressive and offering strong terms for? And if it is, then I've got all the tools to help you in the best way get this house if you want to fight for it. So that's the first question you'll have to ask yourself. But let's say in this situation, you do want to fight for it. One thing you can do to make yourself a person, think about yourself as a seller. You want to know that a good family or a good couple or someone that likes things that you like are going to come and take care of your home and make a family of memories there. And so writing a personal letter to a seller can go a really long way. And that's something you can do ahead of time, to be ready to draft a letter telling the seller about yourself, your family, your kids, what you do for a living, how you envision yourself using their home. And then you can save the last paragraph to compliment them on the specifics of their home, what you love that they've added to the backyard, or how you can see your family really utilizing the large kitchen and all the upgrades that they have made in it for you to entertain and enjoy, big holiday meals. Whatever it is that you can compliment them and also tell them about yourself goes a long way. So that's one strategy you can use when competing specifically in multiple offers. Also, as we are writing an offer, we have to think through the terms of the contract. And that's where my favorite part of my job comes into play. And that's where I'm strategizing with you and negotiating and analyzing the data to come up with the very best strategic offer to give you the best chance of getting this house if you want it. Again, I'm a fighter. So if you want the house, I'm going to fight to help you get it. But if you are not sold out on it being a great house for you, then you've got to let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to fight too hard for the wrong house. So when we get to that point and we are competing, I'm going to look at the most recently sold homes in the neighborhood. The reason why I'm going to look at that is because I want to see how well is this home priced based on historical data. That data tells me, is the home price a little high, a little low, just right, based on the past 6 month sales. Now you have to think, our market continues to appreciate, and it appreciates even in a 6 month period. So data from 6 months ago may indicate that homes have sold for a little bit lower. And the amount of appreciation we're seeing, which is fantastic, could mean that paying more for this house is in line with the comps. So I'm going to look at that data. I'll present it to you and make a recommendation. We can dig through that data as much as you'd like for you to understand where I'm coming from. But essentially, at the end of the day, I want to know, what does this home look like the value should be? Now, I will say that demand does drive that value up, just like on eBay. If a lot of people want the same item, it drives the price up, even though the value may historically be less. Now that there is a high demand and low inventory, it can drive the price up. So here we come into obstacle potential number 2, which is appraisal concerns. So let me talk you through that a little bit. That's where you've agreed to pay the seller a specified amount. And maybe that's a little higher than the most recently sold homes, mainly because you're competing in a multiple offer situation and you win out because you paid higher than the list price. That's super common. And so when that happens, the appraiser may come in from the bank and say, we're not going to lend to you that amount of money that you offered to pay the seller. Now, in that case, the transaction can be derailed completely and be terminated. It can also continue forward because you can ask the seller to adjust the price down to the appraised value. But I will say most sellers are not super interested in doing that because they don't have to. Their home is competing with multiple offers. They may not be interested in coming down to the appraised value. Or you might be able to compromise with the seller to get somewhere in the middle to help lighten the blow of the appraisal being less than the contract price. Again, not things you need to worry or stress about, because I'm going to give you my best recommendation on whether I think the offer we're presenting puts us into a risk for an appraisal issue. So far this year, I've sold 42 homes that have closed, and I have had less than a handful of homes not appraised. So it's not that big of an issue, but enough of one that I like to just mention it, that you have to be aware that there's always going to be an appraisal ceiling on homes, especially if you're getting a loan and not paying cash for it, because that's when an appraisal is required. If you're paying cash, of course, you don't have to get an appraisal, and that can completely eliminate that being an obstacle or a risk for you. Now, the next thing that we'll talk about is the due diligence fee. And this is something that is a hard concept to understand. It's not exciting for my buyers. They don't love this part of the process. And it's where you have to decide how much you're willing to risk for this house before you know everything you could know about it. And so this is a number, generally speaking, in the $1,500 to $5,000 range. That's a lot of money to think about and to risk without knowing everything you need to know. I kind of equate it to an engagement. You don't know everything you need to know, but you know enough to know you want to move forward. That's similar to the process of the due diligence period when you're buying a house. And this is typically a 2-week period, and this allows you to investigate the house from top to bottom with professionals that know the industry and know how homes should run, the mechanics of it. And so you get a good idea of what the home has to offer beyond what you could see during the showing, right? And so that's the question you have to ask yourself. How willing am I to risk an amount of money, whatever that is, fill in the blank, for this home? And I'll advise you and make a recommendation, but at the end of the day, you get to decide, because you're the one who's going to write that check. Now, if the home has been on the market for over 2 weeks, you may get away with a lower due diligence fee on that lower end, $1,500. But if it's been on the market 1 day and there's multiple offers, then you may be in a situation where you have to go on the upper end of that range. And that's where you have to decide, is it worth it to you? Is the house, check off enough boxes to say, yes, I'm willing to invest this amount of money? Because that money, that due diligence money, is non-refundable. You lose it if you walk away for any reason or no reason at all. Don't miss that. So many of my buyers miss that. If you walk away for any reason or no reason at all, that money is forfeited. It goes to the seller to compensate them for the time that they lost off the market while you are doing your investigation. So you have to consider, is it worth it to you? And how much are you willing to risk? I will be here to coach you through that process and make my best recommendation on that so that you feel comfortable, but know that it is uncomfortable whenever you're risking any amount of money. So that is the next potential obstacle that you have to work through, is how much are you willing to risk? But the good news is once your offer is accepted, no other buyer can bump you out of your position, and the seller cannot walk away from you. You are in the driver's seat, in that you cannot move forward or lose out on this house without your willingness. The seller cannot walk away from you, and you get to continue investigating the home and pursuing it as long as you stay engaged in the home buying process for this specific house. So during this due diligence period, we're going to do all the inspections. I've got great inspectors. You don't need to worry about that. And you're going to find out all that you need to know about the home. Now, one thing you should know, in North Carolina, the seller does not have to do any repairs. We are going to ask them to do repairs, but they do not have to. So you have to know that the inspection results may not come in as favorably as you hoped. And in that case, we're going to go to bat to see what the seller is willing to fix or give you money in lieu of repairs to fix, but they do not have to, and they may not, especially if their home sold in multiple offers the first day on the market. So keep that in mind, but know that it is my job and my desire to fight for you to get as much as we can from that. And then you have to remember, if the home does not inspect that well, let's say the home has a high radon level, there's active termites, and the HVAC system needs to be replaced. Those are significant issues that we have to consider. Is it worth moving forward with this house, especially if the seller's not willing to fix, remediate, or treat these types of issues? But they do have to disclose these as material facts to any other buyer. So why would they want to put their house back on the market and disclose that they have these issues? They probably don't. So most of the time, sellers are reasonable and are willing to work through this with you to make it a compromise between the two parties. So again, an obstacle, but not one that we can't overcome. And we overcome every day. So I'll walk you through that, coach you through it, and help you feel comfortable with the inspection results. All right. So we've talked through an appraisal obstacle. We've talked through the due diligence fee obstacle, inspection results. All those things are happening in that 14-day period. So it's a pretty intense period of time, but we're able to get it all done and finish out early, if not right on time. And then on that 14th day, you want to proceed with this house. You've gotten the information you need to move forward. So really, after that 14th day, it's more of a smooth sailing process to get to the closing table. You're really talking to the lender to get all of the final loan documents done, and then on to closing. So you have 14 days where you're in that due diligence period, and then 14 days of kind of calm water getting to the closing table with the lender requirements for the loan. So again, the first month is looking for a house. The second month is contract to close. So again, a pretty quick process beginning to end. And a lot of people ask, when will I get my keys and when do I get to move in? So generally speaking, closing happens about a month from the time you write the contract. And so we meet generally at my office with the attorney, sign documents, 30 minutes worth of time at the closing table. And then there's a lag of about 2 to 3 hours between when you sign those documents and when the keys are given to you and you can move into your house. But generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, it's the same day as closing. So it's a pretty exciting time once we get to that closing table, because it's all coming to a final fruition. So that's the process beginning to end. Again, most of my buyers say it was much easier than they anticipated and much quicker than they anticipated. And you have to know, I think I've shared with you, I've sold over 600 homes at this point. So I've seen a lot of different obstacles come up. And again, I'm not going to bore you with all those details, but I've seen a lot of different things through the process. So I am prepared to help navigate those. And again, they're just obstacles. They're not things that are too hard to overcome. They just require a little bit more time and effort. And the great news is I've got a great team that supports me to help us work through those, whether those are inspection issues, loan issues, or personal concerns that come up in the process. So don't be overwhelmed. And I would even say, don't put off the process thinking we just don't have the time or energy to go through something like this right now. We really take so much off of your plate so that it is simple and easy and as smooth as possible. So that it really is easier than you ever anticipated. One thing I would tell you to consider when you're thinking about lenders is making sure that you have a lender that is willing to give you their cell phone number and that is willing to talk to you on nights and weekends, because oftentimes real estate happens nights and weekends. And if you're working with a bank, that's fine. Just know that you're not going to have access to them over the weekend and probably not at night. And so if you're uncomfortable writing an offer on a home without talking to your lender, that might be a reason to consider working with a different lender. So definitely encourage that that. I've had buyers be very hesitant to move forward confidently writing an offer when their lender is unavailable. And again, if they're working with a lender from a bank, they're going to be unavailable outside of the 9 to 5 window, Monday through Friday. So that's something that I really try to caution my buyers around so they're not surprised by that, because that can feel very unsettling. The other thing that I would want to bring to your attention is that as a buyer, you are responsible for your closing costs. And that term can be defined in many different ways. So I want to try and clear that up for you a little bit. But as a buyer in North Carolina, 9 times out of 10, the seller pays my real estate fee. So you don't have to worry about that. But as a buyer getting a loan, you have substantial closing costs that you have to accommodate for. And so sometimes buyers have the impression that a seller will pay those for them. And I will say in this market, it's very unlikely that a seller is going to pay your closing costs because they don't have to. In a buyer's market, they would be willing to, but we're not in a buyer's market. And so we have to adjust to the type of market we're in. So in that case, the rule of thumb that my lender tells me is a safe bet is a 3% of the purchase price is a rough estimate of what you should expect in closing costs. So for example, easy math, you're buying a $200,000 home, then 3% of that would be $6,000 in closing costs. And you think, gosh, where's all that money going to? And it goes into a few different categories. Some of it is the loan origination fee, and then some of it is prepaids. So essentially you're setting up an escrow account, or you can think of it as a savings account that the lender is going to take some money and set it aside so that they can pay your bills for you. And when I say bills, I mean insurance and taxes, because they want to make sure those two things get paid. The homeowner's insurance gets paid and the property taxes. And so that money is not just a cost of doing business. It is actually money put into a savings account. So you've got some escrow there. We call those prepaids. Then you've got your origination loan associated fees. And then of course you have home inspection related fees, appraisal fees, survey fees, all those types of things that are helping you do your due diligence on the property. So 6% is a good rule of thumb to consider when thinking about the process of buying. Now, another thing that I would share with you is a lot of my buyers come to me thinking they need to have 20% down before writing an offer on a home. And good for you if that is your goal. And I highly encourage that if that is something you can do. But I just want you to know the vast majority of buyers don't have 20%. And because interest rates are at an all-time low, most people would be better served to put less money down than to wait to have 20% when interest rates are higher, right? If you think about that, if interest rates increase by 1%, your buying power decreases by 10%. So if you wait a year, the interest rate goes up by 1%. Now you can buy 10% less of a house because you waited for more money to put down for your down payment. So oftentimes buyers are putting 3, 5, 10% down. So it's something to consider. Don't allow that being a sticking point. Talk to a lender, and I'm happy to make a referral to one before you decide it's not the right time to buy right now. The other thing is a lot of people think, okay, so now you're telling me I have a down payment and I have to pay my closing costs. And now you're talking about this due diligence fee. I definitely don't have enough money. Well, let me tell you this. The due diligence fee is a credit that you get back at closing. So it's not additional money you're paying. It goes towards your down payment or your closing costs. It offsets those. So don't worry about that. Same with the earnest money. And that's the money that comes into play after the due diligence period is over. So don't be discouraged if you're thinking that there's so much out of pocket cash that you're not ready to start the process. Let's have a conversation first. So due diligence and earnest money go towards the purchase at closing and can offset your down payment or your closing costs. So for easy math, let's do it this way. Let's say that your total cost that you're going to bring to closing, again, easy math for me, please, $10,000. The lender is saying at closing, you need $10,000. Well, let's say that you gave $2,500 in due diligence and $2,500 in earnest money already. You've already paid $5,000 towards this home. Now at closing, all you have to bring is $5,000 more because you needed a total of 10 and you've already paid 5. I hope that makes sense. But if not, let's talk. I want to make that really clear to you that it's not additional money. The two pieces of money that you need are your down payment and your closing costs, and you don't need them until closing. So if you write an offer 30 days before closing, you have a month to get the rest of the money. And some of that money could be gift money too. So keep that in mind. If you have someone in the family that would really like to gift you a down payment, that could be used as well. So that's a great option. Another thing just to keep in mind through the process is personal property. So when you walk into a home, I always encourage my buyers to look at the refrigerator and the washer and dryer, because those do not automatically convey with the home. Those are considered personal property. And so if you don't have them and you want them, we need to write them in the contract. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at those. Now, the built-in microwave, the stove, the dishwasher, we don't have to ask for those because those are considered fixtures and they stay and convey with the home. So you don't have to worry about asking for those. Those are already considered part of the home. I always tell people the rough rule of thumb about fixtures and personal property is if it requires a tool to remove it, then it's most likely a fixture. For example, the curtain rods in the bedroom. The curtain rod is fixed to the house with a screw that would require a screwdriver to remove it and damage to the wall. So that is considered a fixture. That will stay unless otherwise the seller has told us that they are non-conveying fixtures, and we agree to that. But the curtains that are on the rods are personal property. So those will not be there on closing day, but the curtain rods will be. So remember that. Light fixtures, mirrors hung on the wall, now floating shelves are super popular. So anything like that that is built in has to be either agreed upon that they're not conveying or they automatically convey. So keep that in mind when you're walking through a home, wondering what will be here on closing day. Think about the tool rule. It's not bulletproof, but it definitely will get you most of the way there. So I hope this is super helpful to you. I'd love to talk more with you. Again, I do this conversation with every one of my buyers before they start the process. So they have just a game plan of the process, the timeline. And if you're interested in having me set up a search for you, just so you can see what's out there in your price range and location, happy to do that. Just send me some criteria at ashley@hunterrow.com. Happy to set up a search for you. And then if you want to just continue this discussion, or if you want a referral to a great lender, let me know. Happy to connect you to them as well. And really want to keep this discussion going, because I know that a lot of us are ready to maybe get out of our homes after the time that we've been in them, realizing that it's not sufficient for our needs anymore. So if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Please send me your questions, follow-up comments, ideas. Love to hear them. And then I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'll keep this going with you, and really excited about the topic that I'll share with you in a week from now. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Again, 1:30 to 2. Please join me if you're available, and I will see you in a week.